Welcome to Super Nutrition Academy's health class with your host and registered holistic nutritionist, Yuri Elkaim. Tune in each week for up-to-date insights on breaking health news and best practices on how to eat for awesome health. It's time to get smarter, healthier, and regain your sanity in a world of information overload. And don't forget to join Yuri at supernutritionacademy.com so you too can master your nutrition and health.
All right, welcome to episode 8 of the Super Nutrition Academy health class. Yuri back with you today, and we've got a great episode lined up for you because we're going to be talking about sugar, and we all know the negative consequences of eating too much sugar, but I've got some really frightening news to share with you today. It's about a 30-year cover-up, which has just recently been exposed about what the sugar industry is up to and why you need to know about it. So sit tight, grab some water, grab a tea, grab a green juice, and get ready to be blown away here. So first of all, just kind of some new stuff that's going on with me. A little while ago, I was in the Dominican Republic for a good friend, Dave Ruel, who's also a online fitness entrepreneur like myself. It was his wedding, and I was down there for a couple of days celebrating, and it was, we had a great time. And while I was down there, the reason that I'm bringing this up is because it all kind of ties in with our topic today, which has to do with sugar. So I got off the plane and I was really jonesing for a pina colada. I don't know what it is about going to the tropics, but it just makes me want to, have a pina colada when I arrive. So got there, mistakenly went to the wrong resort, ended up, a couple hours later, eventually finding the right resort, and met up with some friends for dinner. At dinner, I ordered a pina colada. And to my dismay, it arrived and it was just like loaded with rum, which, I don't even really want the alcohol. I just, I enjoy the taste of a pina colada. And then I also realized that it was one of those pre-made kind of slushy versions that's, in one of those kind of slushy machines. So it's not, freshly made. And it just really turned me off. So after a couple of sips, I decided, I'm not even going to drink the rest of this. So it got me thinking because I was okay. I'm like, well, a lot of people come down here for the drinking, right? They all come down because they get free drinks and free food. It's all inclusive. And for me, it's, I'm just kind of like stepping back and observing this whole process of how so many people, they're looking to get away for a week or two and they go down to these all-inclusive resorts and then just pound back not only the alcohol, but these sugary drinks like pina coladas, strawberry daiquiris. And they're all sitting in there in these kind of pre-made, slushy, sugar-filled versions of the drinks. And, if you're going to have one of those drinks, just, it's better to have it freshly made, obviously, because it just tastes better and it's not full of all that crap. So it kind of just turned me off from a lot of those tropical drinks. And it just also, when you consider what sugar does inside the body, you're better off drinking a glass of red wine. I was trying to think down there. I'm like, okay, if you're going to have to drink some kind of alcohol, well, what would it be? And, I'd probably say straight up hard liquor or a glass of red wine. Now, again, do not use that as your kind of a free pass to do that. I'm just saying, if you're in one of those situations, you're better off with red wine because at least it does have some benefits. So, yeah, so we're talking about kind of the sugar monster, which can arise from consuming that much sugar. And so what I want to share with you today is some really, really interesting stuff that's recently come out in the news. And this was a really shocking stuff that was just came across it about a week ago. And it talks about the sugar industry's secret documents that have like literally been tucked away in the archives for 30 plus years. And these documents are showing us that the sugar industry is using very similar tactics to suppress information and mislead consumers as has the tobacco industry done over the last, however many years. So this was all brought to surface by a dentist of all people. Her name was Kristen Cousins. And she was at a dental conference in Seattle in 2007. So this is several years ago now. And she was obviously there as an attendee. And one of the speakers was speaking on stage about foods to avoid in terms of preventing diabetes and gum disease. And the funny thing is that not one of those foods mentioned had to do with sugar. So there was no sugar in the mentioning there at all. So she started to think about this, and she asked the individual, who was speaking about, okay, well, why didn't you mention sugar? And that expert, quote unquote, said there is no evidence that links sugar to chronic disease, and then he bolted out the door. So Kristen Cousins was obviously very, very shocked by this, and it led her to do some research on this topic. So she literally just kind of, tucked herself away and went to, she was at Colorado State University. She went to the library, went into the archives, and found some stuff that really just floored her. And I want to share that with you over the next couple minutes. So basically what she found was a bunch of information about the Sugar Association, which is this big conglomerate of kind of high power, sugar dudes who have the intention of getting sugar out to the masses. That's their whole idea. So I'm going to give you some quotes directly here, and I'm just kind of sifting through my notes here. Yeah, so she's, one of the first documents she came across was this Sugar Association letterhead, which talked about one of the main goals of the Sugar Association was kind of like their PR strategies for the 1970s, and very similar tactics to deflect the growing concern of a increasingly health conscious population. Right, so as more and more consumers started to understand how sugar could have detrimental effects on human health, the Sugar Association, which obviously has tons of money to advertise and propagate whatever they want, was looking to suppress all of that kind of negative stuff. So she also uncovered a picture with several executives from the sugar industry, and they were all kind of like taken together, and they were holding what was called a silver anvil, which is kind of like the Oscars for PR, so for the kind of the advertising and PR world. And they were given this prize for their successful campaign, and this is the name of it: Forging Public Opinion. Okay, in the face of mounting consumer and government concern over the health risks of sugar. So in spite of consumer concern and governmental concern about sugar, these execs had the wherewithal and the money and the power to get this propaganda out there, trying to mislead people into believing that there's nothing wrong with sugar, that sugar was good for us, it was cool, and really, trying to really forge public opinion in terms of the benefits of it. So pretty crazy stuff. I'm just, again, going through and just looking at some of the notes here to bring some really interesting stuff to you. Just really, really interesting. So the Sugar Association, in the late 1970s, they updated their board of directors. They had 17 different scientists from the world's most prestigious universities, including MIT, Harvard, Yale, and these were all receiving sugar industry money. So these individuals, these researchers, were now heavily involved in the scientific literature. So they were actually doing research in peer-reviewed journals, and they were receiving money from the sugar industry to obviously bias the results to some degree. Some of this money was supplied by the sugar industry itself, but also Coca-Cola, Hershey, General Foods, General Mills, and Nabisco. So all these big conglomerates that really are the devil, as far as I'm concerned, with respect to the food industry, because I can't count how many times I'm going to say this, is that they have no intention to improve your health, right? They don't care. I mean, all this PR, the messaging, and all the nonsense they have is really about propagating their message and propagating their product. They really do not care about your health. Just as an example, Coca-Cola has this polar bear campaign that they're doing now. So they gloat that they're donating $5 million over the next 5 years, I believe it is, to help polar bears, right? So $5 million over 5 years, I believe that's what it is. That's $1 million a year. Okay, for Coca-Cola, that's like they could blow their nose with that money. So again, this is like this huge PR campaign where they're trying to get this good message that Coca-Cola is doing great in the world. But the reality is that it's such a minuscule thing that they're doing. Really, I mean, they're probably paying more for the ads themselves than they are in terms of donating and helping the polar bears. So it's really just a contrived way that we've so been misled by these companies. Anyways, let's further on into the investigation here. So some other stuff. They found that there was different press releases and different documents in there which essentially said that the sugar industry was committed to sucrose consumption. Okay, so in spite of everything that there was, coming up against in terms of, people becoming more conscious of sugar and, maybe it's not so good for us. Well, the sugar industry, like with most other kind of industries like this or associations like this, had the sole goal of getting people to increase their sucrose consumption. Okay, so sucrose is sugar, table sugar, which is found in Coke, which is found in fruit juices, which is found in pretty much all packaged products. So that was their main intention. So as a conglomerate of very powerful executives, their goal was to get this into the masses. And so I'm just going to quote from the Sugar Association e-newsletter from August 2003, which says, "The Sugar Association is committed to the protection and promotion of sucrose consumption. Any disparagement of sugar will be met with forceful, strategic public comments and the supporting science." Okay. So, I mean, this is crazy, crazy stuff we're up against. So with that said, I mean, you can imagine why it's so tough for so many people, including myself and probably including you, to kick the sugar habit. Unless you're eating a 100% whole foods diet and, you've eradicated all external sources of sugar, again, we're fighting an uphill battle. It's in no fault of your own, right? You've just been brought up on foods that have been sneakily inserted or injected with, these sugar molecules, which make foods more appealing, more tasty, more compelling, and more addictive. So it's a very, very tough thing to overcome. Sugar addiction is, because sugar is a drug. It is very similar in chemical structure to cocaine, and it's very, very addictive, right? It just sets off this whole dopamine pathway in your brain, and it's very, very tough to get over. Really, the only way to get over sugar addiction, as far as I'm concerned, is complete avoidance. It's like if you're an alcoholic, you can't just say, well, you can have sugar occasionally, just, once a week. With alcohol, if you're an alcoholic, you can't just tell yourself, well, I'm going to have a drink once a week, because really you have one drink and it opens the floodgates to everything else. So with sugar, obviously you can't avoid all sugar. That's almost impossible. But in terms of like sweets and additional sugar added into your drinks and stuff like that, you really want to do the best you can by removing that, because otherwise it's just too hard, right? You crave what's in your blood. So if you have a diet that is high in sugar, very sweet foods, you're going to crave those foods because that's what your body is used to consuming. The only way to change that is by avoiding the sugar in the first place. And the second thing that I've found very, very powerful, and this is something that's been kind of created the foundation of our Total Wellness Cleanse, is to purify your blood by getting more greens into your body. Okay, so more green juices, more green smoothies, more green vegetables in general, because they are highly alkaline and they will buffer out a lot of the junk in your blood. We're going to talk a little bit more about juicing in an upcoming episode, because there's some really kind of ridiculous stuff out there about this too. But for now, just understand that, two of the easiest ways to get rid of sugar cravings is to get rid of sugar altogether for as long as you can, and to start alkalizing your body by getting more greens into your diet. So along those lines, let me give you a really good resource. If you've got trouble with sugar, there's a really good book called Lick the Sugar Habit by Nancy Appleton, and it's a book that I read a couple years ago. But she's she's got a number of different I think she's compiled like 141 different reasons that sugar ruins your health. So I'm just going to rhyme off a couple of them here. Again, don't ask me for scientific studies to back this stuff up, because it'll take forever for me to find this stuff. But essentially, it's out there. You can do the research yourself. Just go to Google Scholar or PubMed, and you'll find some stuff. Hopefully, You'll find some stuff that's unbiased, but nonetheless, we know physiologically that this stuff is happening. So first of all, sugar can suppress your immune system. We've seen that about a tablespoon of sugar can suppress your immune response for up to 6 hours, which is crazy. Sugar upsets the mineral relationships in the body, and this is very, very important in terms of being able to absorb nutrients from your food. It also compromises the enzyme the quality of the enzymes in your body. So it renders your enzymes less efficient, so they're not actually able to digest foods properly. Reduces your body's ability to defend against bacterial infection. Obviously, that relates to the immune system. It reduces HDL cholesterol, which is the good cholesterol. It actually increases triglycerides and LDL cholesterol, which is obviously not the good ones. It increases reactive oxygen species, which can damage cells and tissues. So these are kind of like free radicals, if you will. It can cause hyperactivity, anxiety, inability to concentrate, and crankiness in children. So children nowadays are so commonly diagnosed with like ADHD and all these different, acronyms. If you just remove sugar out of their diets, I bet you at least 50% of those kids would not need to be on the drugs they're on. Anyways, moving on. Sugar can lead to an increased risk of ovarian cancer. Obviously, it increases the fasting levels of glucose, which can lead to hypoglycemia and eventually type 2 diabetes, causes copper deficiency, interferes with the body's absorption of calcium and magnesium, which is obviously not good for your bones or your muscles, makes the eyes more vulnerable to age-related macular degeneration. So if you want a very, very quick way to just literally shoot your eyes in terms of the quality of your vision, eat more sugar. It raises the level of neurotransmitters dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, which is why you crave more of it as well. Can cause a rapid rise of adrenaline levels, not only in kids, but also adults. And this is very important because it's a stimulant, okay? So sugar is a stimulant, which means that it's going to cause your adrenal glands to pump out more stress hormones, epinephrine, cortisol, and eventually over time, this can lead to adrenal fatigue, and that's not a good thing. It can cause premature aging. It's terrible for your skin. It can obviously lead to candidiasis, which is the overgrowth of candida. It can cause tooth decay. Obviously, it leads to obesity more than anything else. Arthritis, learning disorders, gallstones, appendicitis, hemorrhoids, you name it. I mean, there's so many things that it's doing at a fundamental level to your body, okay? So bottom line is this. Do your best. I know it's very tough. We're all inundated with sugar. Do your best to avoid sugar. Now, that's going to bring up the question that we briefly alluded to in, I believe, episode 1. We're talking about natural versus artificial sweeteners. Now, if you had, one of the things that we've been doing a lot with our healthy baking, because Amy really enjoys baking and she really whips together some good stuff, is to reduce the amount of sugar. Now, we don't really use sugar in anything that we do. We'll only use like honey or maple syrup, which are still forms of sugar in and of themselves. But there are some really good ways that you can replace even those. So even the sweet natural sweeteners like honey, maple syrup, which do contain calories and obviously a heavy amount of sweetness, you can replace those with things like xylitol or stevia, which are much better alternatives to artificial sweeteners like aspartame and Splenda and sucralose and stuff. And they're very, to this point in time, I mean, as to what we know with respect to the science behind it, is that there's really no detriment to human health with respect to the use of stevia or xylitol. Xylitol is actually good for your teeth. It actually helps prevent tooth decay, which is pretty cool. So, moving away from brown sugar, move away from the white sugar, move towards the use of stevia, xylitol if you possibly can. They are a little bit sweeter than sugar, so you won't need as much of it. And at the end of the day, if you can just simply remove or reduce your consumption of sweet foods in general. So this is, even if you're baking healthy foods, if you're baking like a healthy cake or a healthy cookie or a healthy muffin, it's still going to contain some sweetness. And that sweetness is going to trigger a desire for more sweetness. So even if you're using maple syrup or stevia or whatever it might be, there's still that urge to have something sweet the more you consume these foods. So once again, minimize your consumption of sugary foods, desserts, sweets, and so forth. If you're going to enjoy them, opt for healthy versions. Okay, so using stevia or xylitol as an alternative to sugar, maple syrup, and honey if you need to. But Again, minimizing your consumption of those. And then probably the most important thing you can do is really alkalizing your body with green foods, say green juices, green smoothies, green vegetables in general, because they contain some very, very powerful blood cleansing properties, as well as the minerals calcium, magnesium, potassium, which are the main alkaline minerals that really give your blood the restorative values or properties that it needs to reestablish its proper pH. And in terms of resetting your palate, if you're not used to eating vegetables, you're probably not going to enjoy them that much. And probably the reason for that is because your palate is adjusted to enjoy sweet foods. You remove sweet foods for a while, you increase your intake of vegetables, I guarantee they're going to taste a lot better within a couple days. So those are two very simple strategies. Theoretically, application is obviously very different, but I think you really need to be honest with yourself and say, hey, you know what? If I want to kick this sugar habit, because really the food industry is not going to help you out, they're only going to make things worse. And we've seen this with this 30-year cover-up, which is atrocious. And if you want to better your health, you really need to cut your consumption of sugar. I mean, I don't even know what the stats are now in terms of how much sugar we're consuming, but it's crazy in terms of, it's probably more than 100 pounds per person per year. So we really need to cut that back. And in and above everything we just talked about in terms of like the health problems that it can lead to, remember this. Why is it that so many people are overweight nowadays? Sugar is the big culprit, okay? If you look at the amount of refined carbohydrates we're eating, like bagels and breads and pastas, as a base, they all contain sugar, okay? And not the good type of sugar necessarily. They're very easily assimilated, very easily broken down, very easily digested. It can lead to spikes in insulin, obviously. And when we have too much insulin in the body, insulin is a storage hormone, which basically says, okay, store all this stuff away. And if we're not going to be using that as energy, we store it as fat. So if you're eating a lot of sugar, if you're eating a lot of these refined carbohydrates, we're getting increases in blood sugar, which lead to increases in insulin, which lead to increases in storage as opposed to expenditure. Okay, so there we go. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love to hear about it. So leave me a review or a rating on iTunes. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We're going to be cranking this stuff out, several times a week. There's lots of great stuff you need to know about. And in the meantime, don't forget to join me on the blog at supernutritionacademy.com/blog. All of these podcasts will be played there as well, and you can have the transcripts to read if you prefer to do so. And until the next episode, it's been a pleasure to bring this information to you. I'm Yuri Elkaim, and we'll see you soon.